It's called the X-59, and it could be this century's Concorde. NASA's experimental jet takes off for the first time in its maiden test flight over the California desert. After the Concorde's tragedy and retirement, nobody seriously tried again. Break the sound barrier without the boom. Nobody except NASA. Behind closed doors, their top engineers have been quietly shaping a radically advanced aircraft. Mission objective: build a supersonic jet that doesn't unleash a deafening sonic boom. The X-59 was designed to be the first aircraft to break the sound barrier silently. Welcome to techofwar. Today, we reveal how NASA has been quietly shaping its most advanced supersonic aircraft. Back in the 1940s, when the concept lived mostly on paper, Chuck Yeager proved people could push past the sound barrier. That victory carried a cost: a rolling blast that chased every supersonic airplane. The shock was intense enough to crack windows and spook livestock from miles away, flooding towns with complaints across the US back then. One woman said her hens stopped laying whenever a sonic boom hit. The eggs stopped, windows shattered across town, and complaints poured in. Over time, the outcry dimmed, but the problem never vanished. Then, in the 1970s, a bold push reappeared, an effort that promised to reinvent air travel and finally tame the noise. The Concorde arrived as a banner of tomorrow's sleek, delta-wing icon built to shrink distances by cruising at roughly twice the speed of sound. It could span the Atlantic in about 3.5 hours, and the onboard vibe felt straight out of the future for its era. Because passengers couldn't hear the sonic booms inside the cabin, a prominent readout up front constantly showed ground speed, a quiet reminder of just how unreal their pace really was. Yet the gap between Concorde's plush cabin and life under its routes triggered a backlash. What thrilled paying passengers felt hostile to residents below. Protests mounted, headlines followed, and country-by-country governments moved to restrict or outright ban overland supersonic corridors to protect local communities. Rather than uniting continents at record speed, Concorde was pushed to the margins of the map. Its remaining runs hugged open ocean corridors. Even so, it lasted almost 3 decades, an artifact of a future that never quite arrived. Then came disaster. In 2000, Air France Flight 4590 ignited on takeoff, killing everyone aboard and effectively ending any near-term hope for Concorde's return. Public trust collapsed almost overnight, with steep operating costs already weighing on the jet's future. The accident was the final straw. By 2003, Concorde made its last landing, not because the world abandoned supersonic ambition, but because its core problem remained unsolved: the sonic boom that turned communities against it and kept overland skies effectively off-limits. To grasp why this has been stubborn, start with the physics of a sonic boom. When a jet slips beyond Mach 1, the result isn't one pop. A train of pressure waves trails the airframe, stacking into a rolling blast, much like the wake a powerboat leaves as it cuts across a lake. Those combined pressure waves slam the ground as a sonic boom, typically around 105 dB, roughly nightclub-level loud. For half a century, engineers tried to tame it. They reshaped airframes and tweaked configurations. Yet, the underlying physics refused to yield. For decades, the boom was treated as an unavoidable feature of supersonic flight until now. Today, you're watching a milestone unfold. Who's ready to see the X-59 and its breakthrough quiet supersonic tech? NASA's demonstrator aims to do what many called impossible: fly faster than sound with noise about like a car door closing. That's the gap between thunder cracking overhead and a soft knock at your front door. Cut the signature from about 105 dB down to roughly 75. But getting there demanded a total rethink of airframe design. To see how the team pulled it off, we have to return to first principles. Truth is, shaping physics like this needed a tool Concorde never had: modern supercomputers. At NASA's Langley Research Center, the team posed a basic question: how do shock waves really behave around an airplane? In specialized wind tunnels, they uncovered a key insight. Shocks aren't a single burst. They arise at many locations along the airframe's surface. Where conventional airframes let those shocks combine into a hard boom, NASA's team spotted an opening. If they could keep the waves apart, they could sharply cut the noise that reaches the ground. In 2017, trials with a 9% scale model showed promise. Using advanced flow visualization, engineers literally watched how different contours altered shock formation. This wasn't mere academic curiosity. It was a eureka moment validated by laser interferometry and particle image velocimetry, tools that paint airflow in vivid, quantifiable strokes. Early tests revealed that elongating the forward fuselage, essentially turning the nose into a gradual compression ramp, could smear the shock signature over kilometers, diluting its intensity by orders of magnitude. With countless computer runs, engineers tuned every curve and angle. Each iteration went through virtual trials, predicting how tiny tweaks would shape the jet's acoustic footprint. In the tunnel, they used Schlieren imaging's specialized visuals that turn invisible shock structures into something you can actually see. Schlieren, derived from the German word for streak, exploits refractive index changes in air to reveal density gradients, offering a window into the invisible chaos of supersonic flow. These visuals confirmed that the X-59's blended wing-body configuration minimizes off-body pressure peaks, a critical step in proving the design's scalability from model to full size. This let engineers validate their digital models and push the geometry even cleaner. By late 2018, after trials of an 8% scale article at angles of attack up to 50 degrees, NASA held hard evidence the concept was viable. The debate shifted from whether the boom could be softened to how you wrap a real airplane around that shape. The solution would stretch manufacturing tech to its edge and make pilots rethink procedures, sightlines, and the way they fly. In military contexts, this rethink could revolutionize beyond commercial routes. Current supersonic fighters like the F-22 Raptor or F-35 are constrained by boom generation during low-altitude dashes, limiting their use in urban or populated areas without risking civilian disruption or detection. The X-59's principles could inform next-generation stealth platforms, where acoustic stealth complements radar evasion, allowing undetected ingress into enemy territory at speeds that outpace defenses. What you're seeing could look like an error, a machine with proportions so odd that even veteran test pilots doubted it would work. The showstopper is the nose, stretching roughly 36 feet, bigger than a school bus, about 1/3 of the airplane's overall length. That form isn't cosmetic, it sculpts the wake it leaves. At supersonic pace, air behaves surprisingly like water. Picture a speedboat that, instead of throwing big waves, trails a soft, kayak-like ripple. The extended nose lets the jet knife through the flow. Spreading pressure changes along the fuselage so the shock structures stretch and weaken, trimming the punch of the sonic boom. This area-ruling evolution, first pioneered by Richard Whitcomb in the 1950s, has been supercharged here. The X-59's cross-sectional area varies smoothly to avoid abrupt shocks, akin to a dolphin slicing through waves. For the military, such refinements could enable hypersonic adjacent cruise without the thermal and acoustic penalties, paving the way for rapid global strike capabilities that hit targets before adversaries can react. But that elongated nose introduced a new headache, one that forced engineers to rethink how pilots operate a supersonic jet. Before we unpack that, notice another oddity. Unlike most airframes with engines slung under the wings, the X-59 mounts its power plant on top of the fuselage. This isn't different just to be quirky. Mounting the engine on top lets engineers shield the ground from extra shock waves. By elevating the nacelle, exhaust plumes and inlet shocks are directed skyward, away from the surface footprint, a clever bit of directional acoustics that reduces ground-level overpressure by up to 20 decibels in simulations. In combat aircraft, this could translate to drone swarms or unmanned interceptors that loiter supersonically over battlefields, without alerting ground forces, enhancing persistent surveillance, and precision strikes. Now, here's one of the X-59's strangest twists. The cockpit isn't up front. It's set back because the forward view is handled in a very different way. So how do you fly a jet when you can't see what's ahead? The fix feels ripped from sci-fi. Since this aircraft lacks a conventional forward view, NASA fitted Ultra HD cameras to feed an external vision display. Yes, this is a jet with no front windows. The X-59 carries no forward-facing pane, which means the pilot doesn't see ahead without that system's guidance. It's a cockpit you fly by screen, not glass. The external vision system, EVS, leverages 4K sensors with real-time augmentation, overlaying flight symbology directly onto the live feed for intuitive control. Think augmented reality. HUD's evolved into a panoramic viewport. Redundancy is baked in with triple redundant processing and failover to infrared modes for night ops. Militarily, this windowless paradigm could birth blackout fighters, impervious to visual targeting, while pilots navigate via synthetic vision, slashing vulnerability in electronic warfare scenarios. At NASA, we built the external vision system. But what if that vital setup goes down? Don't sweat it. If the XVS blacks out mid-flight, the X-59 isn't helpless. Test pilots have already shown they can land it safely without the fancy display. How? By leaning on stick and rudder basics and backup visuals, the side windows, the canopy's limited forward slice, and by trusting a steady feed of essential flight data from the avionics suite. Bottom line, even if the system hiccups, this jet can still make the runway. This resilience underscores a broader military upgrade potential, integrating AI, assisted piloting that anticipates failures, drawing from datasets of millions of simulated hours. Future squadrons could feature hybrid human-AI crews, where quiet supersonic envelopes enable silent flanking maneuvers, turning the tide in peer conflicts like those simulated in DARPA's ACE program. But the hurdles don't stop at visibility. Punching through the sound barrier turns the air into an opponent. Static charge accumulates on the skin, potent enough to mess with delicate avionics and other sensitive electronics. The fix is a specialized anti-static coating with Teflon-like behavior, the kind of chemistry you might recognize from the kitchen. This non-stick polymer, infused with conductive nanoparticles, dissipates charge without compromising aerodynamics, a trick borrowed from satellite tech. In high-threat environments, such coatings could extend to directed energy weapon platforms, where electrostatic buildup might otherwise disrupt laser emitters during Mach Plus pursuits. But the toughest hurdle is fabrication. When you're sculpting shockwaves, every curve, angle, and panel has to be flawless. A tiny flaw can flip that carefully shaped thump right back into a boom. That kind of precision doesn't happen in a run-of-the-mill plane. As you'd expect, the X-59 is built at Lockheed Martin's storied Skunk Works in Palmdale, California, where aviation gets reinvented. To stay light and tough, the airframe uses advanced composite materials, fabricated with near-laser accuracy. Carbon fiber layups, cured in autoclaves under exacting tolerances of 0.001 inches, form a monocoque structure 30% lighter than aluminum equivalents, yet twice as stiff, ideal for enduring G-forces in dogfights. Skunkworks digital twins, virtual replicas sync to physical builds via IoT sensors, catch deviations in real time, a process that could scale to produce swarms of affordable supersonic munitions. Each section demands months of painstaking work, and while the end-to-end assembly flow has stretched across several years, it keeps evolving to keep pace with new avionics. Right now, there's only a single flight demonstrator, and because the program is highly experimental, there are no current plans to build additional airframes here. Keep expectations grounded. NASA and Skunk Works are steadily refining the X-59 prototype as the program moves forward. They're operating under a performance-based contract bureaucratese for. This is high risk, and crashing is not an option. That's why you see so much time on the ground and inside computers, wringing out issues in simulations, lab rigs, and taxi tests. before anyone even thinks about pushing the throttle for real. Ground vibration tests, shaking the airframe at resonant frequencies, and electromagnetic compatibility checks ensure the jet's innards harmonize under stress, vital for military adaptations where electronic warfare pods must coexist with quiet propulsion without interference. With about 22,000 pounds of thrust, it has enough muscle to push the X-59 to roughly Mach 1.4. But first, after all the rework needed to shoehorn it into the demonstrator, the engine actually had to light. That's why November 2024 was a big moment. Engineers gathered to run a static fire of the core and afterburners. Good news, the sequence ran clean, and the retrofit proved out. The GEF414 variant, augmented with variable cycle tech for efficiency, hints at future military engines that sip fuel at subsonic loiter, yet roar to full afterburner, silently enabling extended patrols over hot zones without refueling, a game-changer for carrier-based ops in the Pacific Theater. Now comes the real hurdle. Fly it for real. And this is where NASA hits another wall. With overland sonic booms banned across American communities, there's essentially one U.S. site to prove what this jet can do: Edwards Air Force Base, a truly vast desert expanse. The test campaign for this airplane is highly unconventional. NASA plans large-scale trials involving hundreds of volunteers and a protocol unlike anything in aviation. When the goal is to capture a sound as soft as a car door closing, while the vehicle streaks by at nearly 1,000 miles per hour, you have to redesign your entire playbook and measurement setup. Acoustic arrays spanning miles, coupled with wearable sensors on participants, will map perceptual thresholds, data that could calibrate military noise ordinances, allowing stealthy overflights during exercises without community friction. Residents in the study won't be told when the X-59 passes overhead. After all, how else do you capture a genuine reaction to something meant to be barely noticeable? So, the team is building full-scale replicas of a typical American house. Then NASA will run trials with dozens of loudspeakers to recreate the acoustic footprint of supersonic flight. The aim is simple: measure how much noise people can live with when a supersonic jet passes overhead. The next question is obvious: what if the team pulls it off? Research shows most viable supersonic corridors run over land. And on those routes, we've been capped at well under half the speed we could actually fly. All this traces back to the sonic boom problem. Put it in perspective. New York to Los Angeles takes about 5 hours today. With quite supersonic, that drops to roughly 2 hours 40 minutes. By 2027, NASA plans to deliver results to the International Civil Aviation Organization and the FAA. Success here could cascade into defense budgets, with the Pentagon eyeing X-59-derived tech for NGAD, Next-Generation Air Dominance, programs. Quite supersonic could enable rapid response squadrons that deploy from CONUS to Indo-Pacific hotspots in hours, not days, outstripping hypersonic missiles in flexibility while evading acoustic signatures that betray position to passive sensors. Of course, there's a wrinkle. For the first time in aviation, the rulebook won't hinge solely on instruments and lab readings, it will hinge on what people actually perceive. X-59's fate isn't just about aerodynamics, it's about everyday ears and neighborhoods. Do you hear a boom or just a soft thump? That answer might unlock overland speed in America. In warfare, this perceptual pivot means redefining stealth to include sonic domains, aircraft that not only vanish from radar but from hearing, fostering asymmetric advantages in urban combat or counterinsurgency, where noise discipline is paramount. The X-59's legacy might arm tomorrow's guardians with wings that whisper rather than roar. What's your take on NASA's X-59? Could supersonic flight realistically return soon? Drop your view into the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.